Coming up on 5 Minute News. 3 killed after human smuggling boat capsizes off San Diego. US Treasury's Yellen tamps down inflation fears over spending plan. And Colombia withdraws controversial tax reform bill after mass protests. It's Monday, May 3. I'm Anthony Davis. 3 people were killed and more than 24 others were hospitalized on Sunday after a boat capsized and broke apart in rough water just off the San Diego coast during a suspected human smuggling operation. Lifeguards, the U.S. Coast Guard and other agencies responded around 10 a.m. following reports of an overturned vessel in the waves near the rugged peninsula of Point Loma, according to the San Diego Fire Rescue Department. The original call was for a handful of people overboard, but as rescuers arrived in boats and jet skis, it was going to be a bigger situation with more people, said San Diego Lifeguard Services Lieutenant Rick Romero. There are people in the water, drowning, getting sucked out the rip current there, he said. 7 people were pulled from the waves, including 3 who drowned, said Romero. 1 person was rescued from a cliff, and 22 others managed to make it to shore on their own, he said. A total of 27 people were transported to hospitals with a wide variety of injuries, including hypothermia. Officials said the group was overcrowded on a 40-foot cabin cruiser that is larger than the typical open-top wooden panga-style boats often used by smugglers to bring people illegally into the U.S. from Mexico. Every indication from our perspective was that this was a smuggling vessel. We haven't confirmed their nationality, said Jeff Stevenson, a supervising agent with U.S. Border Patrol. Agents were at hospitals preparing to interview survivors, including the boat's captain, who Stevenson described as a suspected smuggler. Smugglers typically face federal charges, and those being smuggled are usually deported. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Sunday tamped down concerns that President Joe Biden's plans for infrastructure, jobs, and families will cause inflation, saying the spending will be phased in over a decade. It's spread out quite evenly over 8 to 10 years, Yellen, the former Federal Reserve Chair, said in an interview. She said the Federal Reserve will monitor inflation carefully and has the tools to address it if necessary. Biden's pandemic stimulus and recovery plans total around $6 trillion and will be paid for in part by a series of tax increases on the wealthiest Americans, less than 1% of the population, and on raising corporate taxes. Some Democratic lawmakers have expressed concerns that the tax increases would slow economic growth. Yellen would not speculate on whether Biden would accept a bill from Congress that does not include a way to pay for the spending increases in his plans. Biden administration officials have said a significant cut in the corporate tax rate in 2017 by Republican Donald Trump did not result in a similar increase in investment and corporate competitiveness. Colombia's president has withdrawn a controversial tax reform bill following 4 days of huge protests across the country. In a televised statement, he said his government would work to produce new proposals and seek consensus with other parties and organizations. He had previously insisted tax rises were needed to respond to the economic crisis generated by the pandemic. But tens of thousands of people took to the streets in anger at the bill. Unions who organized the protests said it would disproportionately impact on the poorest people who were already struggling with the economic impact of COVID-19. The president, in his statement, acknowledged it is a moment for the protection of the most vulnerable, an invitation to build and not to hate and destroy. Colombia's gross domestic product dropped by 6.8% last year, its deepest crash in half a century, and the coronavirus pandemic has further driven up its unemployment rate. The proposed tax reforms would have lowered the threshold at which salaries are taxed, affecting anyone with a monthly income of $656 or more. It would also have eliminated many of the current exemptions enjoyed by individuals, as well as increasing taxes imposed on businesses and the number of goods covered by value-added tax. The proposals caused outrage among many Colombians, who say they are already struggling to feed their families during the pandemic. You can subscribe to 5 Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5 Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen Podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.